you're just joining us, we're less than 50 minutes from the scheduled liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket carrying Crew Dragon. And if we start to hear any kind of update on weather or polling, we will pause to listen in for that. But if things go as scheduled, we should be hearing the launch director verify go for propellant load at about T-minus 45 minutes. So we're going to send it over to Hawthorne to carry the ball. John Innsbrucker or Jesse, are you there?
This weather is go at this time.
Dragon copies, go weather.
And there you heard that call out. So far we have good weather. We are go for launch today. This is getting really exciting. I don't know about you, Dan, but my heart is beating pretty fast right now.
Yeah, we've been waiting for those words since Wednesday.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we did hear a call to the crew, just in case you missed it, that they were only tracking one final weather constraint. It was the cumulus cloud rule. They were expecting it to clear up within 10 minutes, and it's cleared up now. So we are currently go on weather.
Yes, and it's been pretty incredible to be so close to launch, and the road leading up to this point has been pretty incredible as well.
It has been. It's been a partnership between NASA and SpaceX. We've been working together since SpaceX started flying cargo to the International Space Station, now getting ready to launch crew. And we've been really fortunate to work with not only a lot of international partners on the International Space Station, but a lot of really great companies.
And as a reminder, here in the control room, we'll be closing doors here once we start with propellant load. Any last-minute bio breaks, please go ahead and accomplish those in the next few minutes.
And the launch director just getting the teams ready. We'll be coming up on that propellant loading. Again, that starts at about 35 minutes prior to liftoff, so in about 12 minutes from now. There's going to be a go, no go coming up really soon. So let's go over to our man, John I, for the latest. John?
It's T-minus 47 minutes, 24 seconds. We're continuing to count down. As you just heard, the launch director and launch team are preparing for the readiness for launch poll. Now, the launch director is currently checking with Dragon mission director and NASA launch manager for their readiness. And actually, it sounds like everybody is good there. The launch director will then ask the team, he'll tell them the poll is open, and the 13 members of the SpaceX launch team will be electrically polled for their go to load propellant, as well as continue all the way to launch. Now, we will hear that poll results and a briefing from the launch director at about T-minus 45 minutes. The good news right now is that the weather is go. All the conditions that were read shortly a while ago at T-minus 1 hour have cleared. We're, as the weather forecaster said, cautiously optimistic. Currently,
Countdown.
the probability...
Poll is complete. We're go for propellant load.
Well, we got an early call out there.
And launch control clear to retract the access arm on time.
Copy that. Arming access arm retract at T-minus 45 minutes.
Got an early call from SpaceX launch director Mike Taylor that the poll is go. You also heard the direction T-minus 45 minutes to prepare for retract of the crew arm. As we hear more discussion, we'll stop and let you listen in. But right now, weather for liftoff, ground level winds are good, 10 to 15 miles an hour, well within limits. Upper altitude balloons show that conditions are acceptable. The red weather conditions have cleared up, the last one being cumulus clouds. And the probability of violation is set at 30% right now, so that's 70% chance of good weather. We're continuing to watch. There is about a less than 10% chance of lightning. We're also watching the abort corridor off of the Atlantic coast. In case, for example, at stage separation, Dragon had to abort into the ocean. The conditions there are acceptable. There has not been lightning lately. The weather, winds are good, light rain. It is go, but NASA is going to continue to watch those conditions.
T-minus 45 minutes and counting. Reminder on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD, and they will approve aborting launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will immediately abort the launch auto sequence and proceed to the launch abort auto sequence. Operators shall also advise launch director whether structural break or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. A reminder on fire alarm instructions. In the event of a fire alarm, key operators previously briefed will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. At this time, weather is go for launch.
You can see on the screen, we're inside T-minus 40, we're T-minus 44 minutes, 5 seconds. Crew access arm retracting away. SpaceX launch director is given the final brief to the crew. And we will be beginning propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. So right now on Falcon 9, we're ready to get into propellant loading. Dragon, crew, getting configured, set up. The arm is pulling away. The range is go for launch. They continue to monitor the air and the sea space. Everything looks good. And we finally have gotten green across the board on the weather conditions, but we can't take a deep breath quite yet. We're going to have to watch the weather all the way down to T0, both here at Kennedy Space Center and out in the Atlantic in the abort zones. Now earlier we saw many of you following the launch from the United States on our hotspot map. Now that we're inside an hour, we're seeing large numbers of folks logging on, tuning in from coast to coast and around the world. So we'd like to know, is this your first time watching a launch live, not counting Wednesday? And if not, how many have you seen before? Tell us using the hashtag LaunchAmerica from your favorite social media platform. And with that, at T-minus 42 minutes, 50 seconds, conditions are go, and we are counting down for an on-time launch. Let's send it back over to Kennedy Space Center as the action begins to pick up on the pad.
Dragon, SpaceX, you are go for Section 7, close visors and arm launch escape system.
We will put Section 7 in work. Visors come in close.
All right, the countdown clock is continuing to tick. My heart is continuing to beat 5 million beats a second, and we are getting so close.
SpaceX Dragon in 7.2. Visors are closed. We're arming launch escape system.
Copy.
And as you just heard, the crew is arming the launch escape system. That is one of the absolute last big milestones prior to liftoff, other than nominal Falcon operations.
So just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract, and obviously we just heard on the comms, Bob and Doug getting ready to arm the launch escape system, and so that is something that protects them all the way to orbit. So when fueling starts at about T-minus 35 minutes, so just over 6 minutes from now, they will have the capability to abort, to separate from Falcon 9 either on the pad or even after liftoff. That's a critical safety capability. And we are going to go over to Hawthorne now to take us through these next minutes. Jesse?
Section, switch in to nitrogen.
And we did hear that call out that they are arming the launch escape system, so very exciting. SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch system ever flown. So we brought back Nick Picone, SpaceX's Nick Picone, to talk more about this again. Thanks for coming back and joining us today, Nick.
Hey, Jesse. Happy to be here. Still monitoring the launch here with our recovery and ground operations teams.
Awesome. And Nick was our mission manager for our in-flight abort test earlier this year and now works on the Starlink team. Nick, on Wednesday, you talked about the launch escape system. Could you just give us a brief summary today for those that are joining today?
Sure. So the launch escape system, again, is our ultimate safety feature to keep Bob and Doug safe in the event of a major Falcon anomaly on the pad. The system is designed to automatically fire if either vehicle detects a dangerous condition developing. And if that happens, Dragon will use its 8 Super Draco engines to push the capsule off and away to a safe distance away from this Falcon. This capability is absolutely critical. It's what keeps the crew safe, and we're now active and armed on the pad with it protecting the crew.
And as you mentioned, the launch escape system allows the Dragon to separate and get away from the vehicle. I believe it goes into the ocean. What happens after it lands safely in the ocean?
Correct. So for most of our failure modes, the successful end state is Dragon deploying parachutes, splashing down safely in the ocean. But since a launch escape can happen while the vehicle's on the pad or anywhere in flight up through orbit, it could be splashing down right off the coast of Cape Canaveral. It could be splashing down thousands of miles away in the North Atlantic. If that happens, to make sure we can get to Bob and Doug as quickly as possible, the Space Force's 45th Space Wing, Task Force 45, has pararescue teams staged and ready all around the world, ready to drop in and rescue Bob and Doug as soon as possible.
And you mentioned that the launch escape system will keep them safe all the way up to orbit. What other options are there after Dragon is in orbit?
Sure. So if for any reason we're unable to dock to the International Space Station, we have several pre-planned return trajectories, which will bring the capsule down to a splashdown point close to shore, where NASA and SpaceX recovery forces will be waiting to recover them. It'll look like an otherwise totally normal recovery operation, except for the early end of mission. This operation is something we're doing with one of two identical crew recovery ships. We do that because the landing sites, we want to maintain as much flexibility as possible. There could be changing weather conditions that bring down one site and leave the other one up. So we have those two identical ships, one in the Atlantic, one in the Gulf of Mexico. And our space operations team can redirect the spacecraft to go to whichever site is the safest option for the crew at that time.
And with the vehicle, in almost any scenario, it sounds like the vehicle will land into the ocean. And it may look like a gentle landing into the ocean, but it's a pretty dynamic event happening. And you mentioned there are teams that are ready to go and rescue the vehicle and the astronauts on board. How do you prepare for something like that, especially with so many different scenarios that could happen?
Sure. So we're lucky to have had about a decade of recovery experience with Cargo Dragon 1 in our previous trips to the International Space Station. That, along with our booster recovery missions, we've got a great team of recovery operators here who have a lot of offshore experience with our spacecraft. The system, though, that we took that experience, we built up a new crew recovery ship, two identical crew recovery ships, I should say, which have a lot of those lessons learned baked into the design of that ship and the operations. These new ships have complete medical facilities, an operational helipad, and redundant communications, power, and propulsion to make sure they're robust and ready for anything we encounter offshore. We've also done tons of training exercises with SpaceX team, the NASA team, and the rescue forces I mentioned earlier, practicing capsule recovery, emergency scenarios where we have to get the crew out of the capsule while they're still in the water, as well as those helicopter evacuations, taking off and landing from the pad many times so that we make sure the team is ready to do that. They're all staged and ready. They feel ready to support, and will be ready to call on us if anything goes wrong today.
Awesome. It sounds like Bob and Doug are in some really good hands and will be safe no matter what occurs on the vehicle. So thank you, Nick, for joining us again, for walking us through all of those details. I hope you're just as excited as we are for launch coming up here very, very shortly now. So we're going to send it over to KSC to Lauren.
Thank you, Jesse. So as you just heard, fueling is about to begin at T-minus 35 minutes. We are about 50 seconds away from that. And so we're getting really, really close to the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011. The launch escape system is armed, which, as you know, happens before fueling. And Dragon propellant load, that's the propellants that are inside of the Dragon capsule, not the rocket. Prop load for Dragon took place weeks ago and just a few miles down the road in what we call Dragonland. And those propellants, they are MMH, or monomethyl hydrazine, which is the fuel that we use. It's hypergolic fuel. And NTO, or nitrogen tetraoxide, that's the oxidizer. Those two come together and they ignite in space to propel the vehicle. You don't need that TTEB or a third thing to ignite because hypergolic propellants don't require it. You just need the fuel and the oxidizer. And as you just heard, propellant load has started on Falcon 9, and that's awesome. All right, so that bipropellant system feeds all of the engines on Dragon So Dragon has 12 service section engines in each, so there's 3 in each quad, 3, 3, 3, and 3. Those are used for on-orbit maneuvering for Dragon. There's also 4 additional Dracos that are underneath the nose cone for large delta V maneuvers that the vehicle will perform. But the engines that Nick Pacone was talking about earlier are Super Draco engines. We have 2 in each quad of the vehicle, so 8 total. And those are bigger engines with a high flow propellant system.
Densified means it is kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles. This allows for more oxidizer to be loaded into the first and second stages. Now with the fuel and oxidizer on hand, we need an ignition source to complete that fire triangle, as we call it. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-Tub. It ignites in the presence of oxygen and gives off a green-colored flame. Now it's hard to see on the first stage ignition due to the water that'll be spraying on the pad, but you might just see the green flare as the second stage engine ignites following stage separation over 2.5 minutes into flight. Now currently first stage fuel tank is about 10% full. The first stage, as a reminder, as you look on the left side of your screens, the first stage is the long white cylinder at the bottom, topped off by the black cylinder. So over 2/3 of the rocket is that first stage. So the fuel tank is getting loaded. We're also loading the liquid oxygen into the first stage also. The second stage, which is the top 1/3 between the Dragon and the black cylinder, that's the white second stage, that is being loaded with fuel right now. That's about 8% loaded at this moment. Liquid oxygen loading is going to begin on second stage at T-minus 16 minutes 30 seconds. Liquid oxygen loading will continue on both stages all the way down to the last few minutes of the count. We're also loading helium into pressure vessels on the stages. That's used to pressurize tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the strong Merlin turbopumps. On board the Dragon spacecraft, astronauts are monitoring systems while the propellant is loaded into Falcon 9. While we mentioned we had trained them with sounds that we had recorded on board. They've been through most of a propellant load, and they are now experiencing those sounds and vibrations.
Stage 1,
The
grab
range
helium load
continues to
started.
report no problems. They are go to support launch. Weather, the last of the red conditions cleared up about 15 minutes ago. Everything is marginal but acceptable on the weather. We'll continue to watch all the way through the countdown. Now, as a reminder, today we are now into an instantaneous launch window now that we've begun propellant loading. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity tomorrow, May 31st.
Thanks, John. For Demo 2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our Cargo Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, but with two noticeable differences, and that's docking and splashdown.
And as we await T-0 in just under 29 minutes from now, the ground operations teams are doing a series of system checks to make sure Dragon and Falcon 9 are both ready for liftoff. And we're continuing to get live views inside the capsule with Bob and Doug, and you're now also looking in firing room 4 down there at the Cape.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until the Falcon 9 first and second stage separates and sends Dragon on its way to the space station.
And at this point, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where the vehicle will execute a series of burns that gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the space station, as you can see in this animation. And just after putting Dragon into the same orbital plane as the station, the teams will get ready for Dragon's approach and docking maneuvers.
The next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. And this is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which use a process called berthing. Berthing requires a spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously with no crew on board the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism, the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules on the station together. It's a little bit slower of a process, but the hatches are significantly larger than the docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up those really big cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then next up on the trip, deorbit entry and landing, or splashdown, which is going to cover all the operations following that final departure maneuver. It's going to include events like the trunk separation, closing of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, and then eventually as they get into the atmosphere, the deployment of the drogue and the main parachutes, and all of that ends with splashdown right off the Florida coast. At that point, teams from SpaceX will move in with their recovery ship, grab the capsule out of the water, and work to get Bob and Doug out of Dragon after a successful mission in space. So we are 26 minutes away from launch. Fueling of Falcon 9 is continuing. Let's check in one more time down with the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. We are so pumped right now because things have cleared up and it looks like we might actually do this today. If you're just joining us, we are now 25 minutes, 46 seconds and counting from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. This will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. And we want to share with you the results of a poll we asked a little earlier. If you could go to the moon, now it's not where the astronauts are going today, they're going to the space station, but if you could go to the moon, would you rather visit the South Pole where no one has been before or the Apollo 11 landing site? And it was a pretty even split. We had 46% of you say you would go to the moon's south pole, and 54% of you would go to the Apollo 11 landing site. I kind of side with the Apollo 11 landing site because I'm a history buff and I want to see where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin set foot. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Lauren, which place would you go?
I'm with you on that one, and I would love to go see that flag there and those footsteps, those footprints.
And we are thrilled to see all of you following along online. Thank you for answering our poll. And we're going to go over to Tahira, who's been monitoring all the action with less than 25 minutes to go. Tahira, I'm sure things are heating up online.
Hey, Marie, I mean, you're completely right. Now that we have that go for launch, people are on the edge of their seat right now, waiting on this historic moment to take flight. As you can see, photos are still coming in of just everyone around the country showing their excitement for this launch. And it's really been a touching thing to see how everyone's kept this excitement going from Wednesday's first attempt. So we just took a look at numbers, and we are now over 3 million people tuning in for this historic launch. And so for me personally, I just want to wish Bob and Doug the best of luck. This will be my own first time watching humans lift off to space from the United States, and it's just going to be a super emotional moment. For that, Marie, back to you at Kennedy for these last minutes before launch.
All right, thanks, Tahira. And Leland, we got 23 minutes and some change to go. What do you think Bob and Doug are feeling right now?
I think, you know, they're very calm, cool, and collected as test pilots, but I think they're thinking about what are the steps that I have to take if a malfunction or something happens. And so the nominal stuff is all kind of automated, but if something happens where they have to intervene with those touch screens, that's what they're thinking.
And we're just inside 23 minutes now. So on Wednesday, we were 5 minutes further in the countdown when we heard that call to scrub, and the weather was still very touch and go at this point on Wednesday. But today, at least for right now, I don't want to jinx it. I'm afraid to even say it out loud, but it looks better today.
Yeah, and it feels like, whew, I'm feeling it a lot more than I did on Wednesday.
Right.
And, you know, speaking of Bob and Doug and them being really calm and cool and collected, having had the opportunity to be in meetings with them and to watch them train, I have to say, and to all of my friends who work with them every single day, the feedback is always just what great people they are.
Right.
And just how not just bright and sharp they are, but just good people.
Right.
And around the office, we often refer to them as the dads.
The dads? What
they're
is
the
that?
dads. They're dads. They are dads,
Okay.
and we've met their families. And when you see people on that very personal level, it starts to mean so much. They are a part of our team. You know, they're not a customer. They're our team. They're not a payload. They're our team. They're our family. And so we're just so excited to see the dads up there today.
Yeah. Go dads.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go send it over to Gary for an update from Houston. Gary?
Hey Marie, the space station team here is focused. All eyes are on the system checks that are happening across the board, and we're listening in as we close in on launch, and I can tell you that things are looking very good. Chris Cassidy will be watching from the International Space Station, right now flying over the Pacific Ocean. It's heading to cross right over the launch pad. We might even get some good views from the station. Hope to be capturing those. We'll have the launch view on the big screen up front, and everyone's excited to see our 2 crew members on their way to the International Space Station. But before we get to it, I just want to pass on good luck from the entire flight operations community here in Houston. It's always exciting to be doing something wholly new and history-making with station operations, and we can't wait to see our team members Bob and Doug in low Earth orbit and heading to the International Space Station. That's it from us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Hawthorne for the latest happening there. John.
T-minus 20 minutes, 30 seconds. We're
Strong
continuing to
started.
count down. Everything is still looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon. 22 minutes, 45 seconds after the hour.
Stage
Right
2
now on the
RP1
right-hand
mode is complete.
side, you can see a large white cloud coming off of the strongback. That is normal. As we get ready to load the second stage with liquid oxygen, we have to chill in the plumbing lines going up that strongback. And so as we relieve pressure, the moist, humid Florida air condenses around it, and that gives you the cloud. So that tells us that things are actually on schedule. We did begin propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. Fuel loading on the second stage, I believe we just heard the call out that it is complete. First stage fuel load is continuing, and right now that's a little more than, that's about 60% of the way full. So things are looking good. Second stage is getting ready to begin the liquid oxygen loading. After they finish chilling in the lines that you see on the monitor, they'll begin the load at T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. The range right now is go, ready to support. Weather continues to be go. As we inch our way closer, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're waiting to hear if anybody calls out an issue, but for the moment, as you can see on the screen, it looks good. Now on the Dragon side, the Dragon mission director and the team there are reporting no issues. They've done their communications checkouts. The crew access arm, as you can see, is retracted away from the spacecraft. The crew is strapped in and they are ready to go. Now final instructions will be going to the crew at T-minus 10 minutes. The crew displays will be configured for launch, and that setup will give astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley insight into how the launch is proceeding and provides constant updates on vehicle health. We've already heard the crew give their go, close their visors, and get ready for launch. For Dragon, it'll enter terminal count at T-minus 5 minutes. When it transitions to internal power, we'll hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to 0 and to liftoff. But right now, at T-minus 18 minutes, 15 seconds, everything continues to be go for an on-time launch. So Dan, Jesse, things are looking pretty good. How are they doing over at your stand?
Things are great from about 15 feet away from you, John, and honestly, things are looking pretty great down at the pad there. We're seeing a lot more blue in the sky. Green is the color we want when we're talking about weather, and that's where we're sitting right now. So we're continuing to count down. We are under 18 minutes away from liftoff. Again, it's an instantaneous liftoff it's going to be 12:22 and 45 seconds here on the West Coast, 3:22 and 45 seconds over on the East Coast there in Florida. Just a reminder, it's going to be about a 9-minute ride up to orbit for the Falcon 9 and Bob and Doug on board Dragon. It'll be a 2-stage flight, so we'll see the first stage fly until we hear MECO, or main engine cutoff, about 2.5 minutes into flight. After that, the second stage will take over and continue to power them the rest of the way. Second engine cutoff comes in just under 9 minutes at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds. Following that second stage completing its job, it'll continue to coast for about 3 minutes. It'll do a slight attitude adjustment and null out any rate, so make sure it's not in any kind of a spin before they do separation. So that's when the Dragon spacecraft will physically separate from the Falcon 9 vehicle and Bob and Doug will be flying free. It's about a 19-hour ride if we launch today on time. So that means Bob and Doug will get on orbit. They'll have a number of burns, or those firings of those Draco thrusters that they'll do over
Stage 2 launch load started.
We hear the locks. The liquid oxygen load has now started on stage 2. But again, they're going to be doing a series of burns on the way uphill towards the International Space Station 5, spread out over the first 16 hours or so of their flight until they get much closer, and it's time for that approach and docking. And we are expecting that with an on-time launch to happen today.
Hey, mi gente, ¿me escuchan? ¿Me escuchan por ahí? ¿Quién me escucha por ahí? A ver si me escucho. No sé si me escucho. Tengo que chequear. Oye, se ve a mí que me están dando la entrada. Chévere, chévere, chévere. Puedo bajarle un chingo la pantalla. Yo me meto ahora mismo. Quería como hacer un video de todo. Ay, encontré volumen de la pantalla.
the space station. How does that experience compare to today?
Nice.
I was nervous then. I stopped getting nervous for launches. Today I'm nervous again. Super nervous.
Bajé un poquito el audio.
No, it's a
Escucho yo.
fantastic day today. I'm really excited. The team is pulled together. It's such a professional operation. And when I say team, by the way, I mean SpaceX and NASA. These folks have been working incredibly hard and have done a fantastic job.
Yes, and we are all so excited. And we know
Ya
that we
estamos
have
casi
to get back
14.
inside of mission control, but is there
para
anything that
lanzar
you
el
wanted to say
Esto me
before
emociona
liftoff to NASA and SpaceX?
Pero no se sabe que
Well, I want to thank NASA, of course, for their generosity
That's
and
it.
their help with getting to this
Lang-
place. I want to thank all the
Mira, muchas
SpaceXers who have come together to make this moment
Las
in history. And I want to thank Elon for hiring me.
¿Qué va a pasar el
Thank Elon for hiring you as well.
stack de Tesla? Eso
Thank
está
you so much for joining us. We'll let you get back to mission control. And good luck with launch today.
Dice Mari que tiene que
Thanks,
seguir,
Jesse, and Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
Yo no creo que vaya a publicar algo.
Well, we are so excited. We are just a few minutes away from countdown, so we are going to turn it over to Dan.
A mí me estaban preguntando que si se ve desde Florida.
Take it away,
O se
John.
escucha cortado. Qué mal.
T-minus 13 minutes, 30 seconds, continuing to count down. We're continuing to
¿Cómo así cortado, Clario?
onto the first stage.
Ah,
Should finish
bajito.
up in just about 6
Déjame saber
minutes.
para arreglar.
Fuel is completely loaded on the second stage. That's closed out. And we are continuing to load liquid oxygen on both the first and second stage. The liquid oxygen load beginning on the second stage just about 3.5 minutes ago. We are also loading cryogenic helium into the storage vessels on the first and second stage, getting in the last little bits of helium when we keep it cryogenic, cold and liquefied. That gets us, just like we do with liquid oxygen, the maximum amount into the storage volume so that we can get the most performance out of the vehicle. Right now, we are in a fairly quiet state on the vehicle. Ground pumps continuing to put the propellant in to first and second stages. Next significant issue callouts that we're going to hear will probably be inside the T-minus 10 minutes when they talk to the crew. We'll listen for that. But at the moment, everything continuing to look good at T-minus 12 minutes and 20 seconds.
We're getting real close now, John. It's only a little over 12 minutes away. Just a reminder for everybody, it's about a 9-minute ride uphill. We'll have some dueling boxes going on as that first stage is going to be coming home while the second stage is carrying Bob and Doug into orbit. But obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on our astronauts the whole way uphill. Some of the calls that you'll be hearing, as there will be what we call performance calls over the Dragon to ground the entire way uphill. And you'll just hear some of the SpaceX engineers calling out trajectories and booster performance. So we're always looking for that word nominal. I know that's one of John's favorite words. That's one of mine too. We want to hear nominal as much as possible up on the way uphill. You might also hear some number and letter combinations, and those correspond to the different abort zones that Bob and Doug are in during their flight uphill. There's 1A and 1B, which signify that they're on the first stage. Those carry them from there in the Cape all the way up to about the very top of North Carolina. And then we'll have 2A through 2E or 2 Echo, and that will be on the second stage, and that goes from North Carolina all the way up to about the tip of Newfoundland, so in the northern Atlantic. And then there is a zone of the northern Atlantic that we're going to avoid, and so you should hear the call out be something similar to forward to Shannon, and that just refers to Shannon, Ireland, which they'll be going off the coast of Ireland at the later stages of the second stage if they have to abort. So just prepping you now for some of those calls. You're hopefully going to hear that word nominal a whole lot on the way uphill. 10.5 minutes. Things are pretty quiet. As John I said, it'll pick up right at about 10 minutes. We'll wait for the crew just to confirm that their displays are in order. The crew is already strapped in and reported that they are go for launch. And we'll continue to watch the fuel gauges tick up on the Falcon 9 vehicle until fueling cuts off at just about 2 minutes prior to launch.
Dragon, SpaceX confirmed displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon displays are configured for launch.
Copy. Bob, Doug, on behalf of the entire SpaceX team, it's been a huge honor to help you get ready for today's historic mission. Know that we're with you, have an amazing flight, and enjoy those views of our beautiful planet.
Thanks, Jay. It is absolutely our honor to be part of this huge effort to get the United States back in the launch business. We'll talk to you from orbit. Thank you.
Copy all. Thanks for those words.
The SpaceX core, so again, that voice that's going to be talking to Bob and Doug throughout their mission from right here in Hawthorne, just offering a few quick words. The crew did confirm their crew displays are configured for launch. We are coming up on 9 minutes and counting.
We've gotten through T-minus 10 minute with the crew discussions. Activity is now going to switch over to Falcon 9. Our next major event comes at T-minus 7 minutes. We begin what we call engine chill. Pre-valves will open. Those currently separate propellants on the first stage from getting down to the Merlin engines. We'll open the pre-valves. That allowed fuel liquid oxygen to flow to the top of the pumps. And more importantly, when we open the valves, that'll allow us to begin chilling the 9 Merlin 1D turbo pumps on the first stage engine. It'll take a few minutes to get them cold enough to where they would then be ready to pass the large amounts of liquid oxygen through the pumps and into the main thrust chambers when we get to engine ignition at T-minus 2 seconds. We don't want to try to run highly chilled liquid oxygen through a warm pump. You would flash that into gas, and running gas through a high-speed pump is not a good thing. So right now, we are waiting for T-minus 7 minutes. That'll start the engine chill. Shortly after that, we will also get the fuel shutdown. Listening to the SpaceX launch director in the background there. As I mentioned, at T-minus 7 minutes as we start the chill, we will also get into the final topping off of stage 1 fuel, and then the fuel load will complete.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Probando el audio. Siete minutos.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 engine chill
Bueno,
has started.
supuestamente es un test. Ale, ¿se escucha el audio mío? Excelente. Entonces, supuestamente es un test para próximas misiones. Esta es la primera vez que hacen las pruebas con gente dentro de la nave. Entonces, ayer yo creo que fue, antes de ayer, no recuerdo. Ellos intentaron hacer eso. No pudieron.
Liquid oxygen load on first and second stage will continue until the last 3 to 2 minutes.
O el miércoles, me dice mi esposo. Fue el miércoles que intentaron hacerlo, pero no pudieron subirlo. El clima aquí en Florida es impredecible, entonces no lo pudieron subir. Ahora se escucha, Clario. Él hizo una magia ahí. yo seteé esto ahora mismo. Pues todo esto lo puse ahora mismo. Sé que debe haber un delay con la cámara. Sí, hay un delay pequeño, pero no voy a bregar con los settings ahora de OBS. Vamos a dejar eso así. Yo estoy muy emocionado con esta vuelta. Te decía que mi primer hijo se llama Ilan. Y lo nombré así por la admiración que siento por Elon Musk, el inventor de Tesla, PayPal y todo lo demás. Es para mí una persona que tiene muchas cosas positivas que ver. Obvio, todo el mundo tiene sus cosas a su lado negativo. Por lo positivo lo admiro mucho.
Oxidizer on the first stage, ticking up towards that 80% mark on the second stage. We'll be counting down all the way till about 2 or 3 minutes, as John and I just said, until everything is loaded in Falcon 9.
Heaters closing out.
And then we will go for launch.
¿Cómo así, Malvin? ¿Que se están muriendo? ¿Cómo así?
Transition to configure for terminal count.
Vehicle tanks pressing for strong back retract.
We're pressurizing the Falcon 9 tanks. We're going to open the clamp arm around the second stage and begin to retract the strongback. We'll move back about 2 degrees. That'll get us to the liftoff position. At liftoff, the strongback will then recline.
So, lo nuevo con este cohete es que, por ejemplo, este cohete puede ser reusado. Eso es la gran cosa que Elon está agregando a esto de la NASA, que ellos puedan reusar eso. Eso salva millones de dólares. Poder reusar ese tubo grande de abajo. So, ustedes pueden ver que tiene 3 anillos. Pero este de aquí, bueno, de ahí para abajo es lo que se puede reusar de nuevo. So, eso solamente le da un empujón. So, todo esto de aquí es solamente para darle un empujón a esta cápsula que está aquí arriba. Después de ahí, esta parte regresa hacia abajo y esta parte de aquí se va para el espacio.
They have insight directly into Dragon and the Falcon 9. They're able to see where their fuel loading is at, how everything's progressing down with the count.
Se está acordando de la película Gravity. Están asustados. ¿Ustedes creen que se puede ver si yo salgo afuera? Yo estoy en Florida ahora. Pero eso es en Orlando, dice mi esposa. Lo están haciendo. Hay que buscar dónde es.
Igniter purges.
Eso es buena pregunta. Hay que preguntarle a la gente de la NASA cómo eso vira para atrás.
I'll go bleed.
Dragon has transitioned to terminal count and is on internal power.
Stage 1, locks load, close out.
Okay, we're at T-minus 2 minutes, 42 seconds. Stage 1 LOX load is closed out. Stage 2 will continue to load for about another
2 minutos, mi gente, para lanzar esta vuelta para
Once we get the completion of Stage 2 LOX loading, we have to vent down the line, so you'll see another large
Puedo sentir un poquito de ansiedad porque en ocasiones todo el mundo, todo el mundo espera que vaya como planeado, pero si no sale así.
Going on internal power now.
Just a few seconds away from the Stage 2 LOX load being complete. It's been almost 9 years since we've been in this position.
Si ustedes me ven que salgo huyendo fuera para ver si lo puedo ver. Pues voy a salir como un loco al parqueo a ver si lo veo. Si no se ve, vuelvo para atrás. Y toda esta agua.
Stage 2 LOX load is closed out. Propellant fills are
¿O tú crees que de noche se viera, Clario?
Dragon is in auto idle.
Stage 2 LOX load complete. All fuel, all oxidizer on Falcon 9. 1 minute 34 seconds to go till launch.
Yo.
Ground gas closeouts is starting.
Ya lo sabes, los minutos más ansiosos. Yo estoy así como... Uy. Es verdad, loco, murieron todos. Ay, ay, ay. Bueno, ahí y nadie se presionó ni nada. Nada. Bueno, no se ve porque yo tengo la pantalla chiquita, pero yo estoy así mirando para...
FTS is armed for launch.
Under a minute now,
Oye,
the FTS.
Un minuto para lanzar la vuelta esta.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
Go for launch. Yes.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
Minus 30 seconds.
30 segundos.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
Mira el agua,
4,
ya el fuego.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Seconds into flight, stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds into this historic mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket.
Mira, veo,
all
mira.
systems are go.
Mira, ven, para que sea parte de la historia del cohete.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
1000 kilómetros por hora va eso ya.
M1D throttle up.
We're throttling.
Heard acquisition of signal Bermuda. That's one of the other ground stations.
Yo no creo que tú puedas ver eso. Con un cielo tan azul, tan brillante, no creo.
Stage 2 propulsion is still nominal.
Sí, papi, está. Ven, mami, agarré bebo. Yo, pero eso fue de una vez, more. No, y todavía la vaina sigue acelerando. Mira, va por 8000 kilómetros por hora. Increíble.
A little over 4 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Bob and Doug flying at more than 5,600 miles
Dragon
per hour.
SpaceX nominal trajectory.
Already almost 200 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Nominal trajectory continuing. And while they continue uphill, looks like we are getting a view of the first stage as well.
Yep, on your right screen, you can see that first stage with the grid fins deployed. It's making its way back to attempt to land on our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You Today. And we're just about a couple minutes away from the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 Merlin engines do ignite to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. And then after the entry burn will be the landing burn, which is just a single engine
Dragon SpaceX nominal trajectory.
And you heard
nominal
starting chill for entry burn.
There's that call out. They are still on a nominal trajectory on
Yo,
Dragon.
12,000 kilómetros por hora.
Still on second stage, and that's that MVAC engine. Again, on your right screen is that first stage booster coming back towards our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love
La
You.
pantalla
We're about
derecha
a
es
minute
cohete
away from
regresando.
entry burn.
Meanwhile, that second stage continuing to power.
Va a ser interesante también ver cómo este cohete
That's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds into flight. So a little over
Alvin preguntaba cómo es que va a bajar. Esos pequeños cositas, estilo película, una movie real.
Dragon physically separates from the second stage of the Falcon 9 after the upper
Dragon
stage gets a
SpaceX
chance.
nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies, nominal trajectory.
Ahorita tú vas a ver
Continuing to check
miles y
in
miles de
with
memes
Bob and
dicen
Doug
que son
as they are
falsos.
on a nominal trajectory.
Son
Just about 10 seconds away from that first stage, starting that entry burn on your right screen. We should be able to see that view live.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
No, y sigue subiendo.
And there is that entry burn beginning.
Todavía lo que están es a 200 kilómetros de
This burn
altura.
lasts about 36 seconds
So, la
long.
distancia que ellos tienen hacia arriba es menos la distancia. Esto está botando.
While that entry burn continues, we're just about a minute away from SECO. We'll have a number of events all happen in rapid succession. It'll be the second engine cutoff.
Stage 1
we'll
entry
be
burn
looking for
shutdown.
that stage 1 landing burn shortly after.
Yeah, actually, just within a few seconds of each other. It's such a cool view on your left screen, seeing Bob and Doug on Dragon. Right now, you can see the displays that they are seeing right now themselves.
Terminal guidance.
And back throttle step.
Todo esto
We're
me
coming up
emociona, porque
25 seconds or so away from
entender que la
SECO,
persona que
second
está
engine
detrás de esto,
cutoff.
que he mencionado,
This is
ustedes
also the
vieron
point
ahorita,
where
llegaron
Bob and
esa y
Doug
todo
are
lo demás.
experiencing their highest
Es
G-force. We've
Ilan,
seen the
Ilan
counter
Juan.
tick up to right
Nadie,
about
nadie lo
420.
mencionó. Imagino que él debe estar con el mismo
You were
entusiasmo viendo la
Shannon, so
pantalla,
that just
contento
means
de
they're
que
in
esto
their
está
final abort zones. If they were to abort at this point, would either be an abort to orbit or to land off the coast of Ireland, standing by for second
Stage 1
engine
landing
cutoff
startup.
confirmation.
And back throttle step.
Hey,
And back shutdown.
todo el mundo con su máscara ahí.
Confirmation of SECO's second engine cutoff.
Now we are waiting for our first stage to make its way to our drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
Dragon SpaceX nominal
Yo no-
orbital insertion.
Like, de verdad, y por eso que a veces
Confirmation
todas esas
nominal
teorías
orbital
salen,
insertion.
porque
Nominal orbital
entender el mundo que vivimos ahora es demasiado difícil.
And what you're seeing on your
Viste lo
screen is a
rápido que
live
se
view of
subió,
our
lo rápido
drone
que se
ship.
iba para arriba. Y
Our
ahora
first stage will be
verlo
coming down.
venir atrás, ¿sabes?
Looks like we lost that live view, but we'll wait for confirmation of that landing shortly here.
Falcon 9 first stage successfully landed.
And
aboard
there you
course
can see on your screen, Falcon
What?
9 has landed.
What?
This is the first Falcon 9 to carry
Acquisition of signal
humans to
Newfoundland.
orbit.
More,
So
dije que
very
ya
exciting
aterrizó.
for us. And as you can see on your right screen, Bob and
Ya me lo
Doug
perdí, voy a
are
tener que ver el
still
replay.
making their
Stages of the Falcon 9 doing their job, placing Bob and Doug into orbit. I mean, this is
¿Cómo
a
estarán los
day.
tactos de test?
This is a historical day. This is us kicking off that new era of space flight that we've all been talking about and longing for since the space shuttle program came to an end in 2011.
Yes.
And the weather cooperated.
Yes. Second time's a charm.
Right.
All right, so day for the history books. As you can see, we have lost some live signal there, but the mission still continues, and we're going to send it over to KSC to continue broadcasting live with you
Expected
guys.
loss of signal Newfoundland.
Yeah, Jesse and Dan, we are just in awe over here. When I woke up this morning and looked at the weather forecast, I was like, man, we're going to be back here on Sunday, but we did it. The room cleared out. Everybody was outside watching, and the inside, the lights were shaking, the cameras were shaking. Lauren came back in with tears in her eyes. This is really amazing.
I can't believe it. I saw it with my own eyes. This is, I'm a little bit speechless. Just so grateful that.
Bueno, mi gente, yo lo voy a dejar hasta aquí, este video. Voy a dejarlo hasta aquí. Voy a chequear qué está pasando allá afuera. Voy a chequear el internet, a ver qué es lo que. Voy a chequear con mi amigo Marciano, a ver qué es lo que él piensa de este lanzamiento. Fue un éxito. Al menos eso vimos. Alguien tenía que venir y dejarme caer el sentir de la duda en esto, diciéndome que si pienso que lo de la tierra plana, todo ese asunto vino y de una vez me llenó. Especialmente cuando perdieron la señal de la cámara en los momentos más cruciales. Eso me hizo como, ok, tierra plana, esto, lo otro. Me hizo pensar en toda esa vuelta. So, vamos a chequear qué es lo que hay en internet. Vamos a ver qué dice la gente. Quería, qué sé yo, grabar esto. Quería compartir de una vez mis emociones de esto. Y dije, ok, vamos a ir live. Vamos a chequear qué está pasando con esta vuelta. Y bueno, aquí lo tienen, aquí. Voy a averiguar de qué se trata esa misión, más que tratarla con humanos, ¿verdad? Pero nada, eso fue bien divertido. Hasta aquí el video, ya ustedes saben, suscríbanse a mi canal, Justo Peña de este lado. Hablamos ahorita, el video que viene después de este es el Mavic Air 2, que lo tengo por ahí, ya hice live el unboxing, pero no lo he publicado, ustedes saben que yo soy lento. Pero nada, eso viene bajando bonito. Hablamos ahorita, bye bye.